The winter wind howled across the high plains, sharp enough to slice through skin. Snow, white and blinding, swirled around My Lin's ankles with every agonizing step she took. The air shimmered not with heat, but with a biting frost that bent the horizon into a gray, lifeless blur. Her throat burned from the dry cold, and her thin canvas shoes, utterly unsuited for this weather, were soaked through, turning her feet into blocks of ice. She kept walking because stopping meant freezing, and freezing meant dying. She had been walking since the gray light of dawn, clutching a battered leather suitcase that held little more than a spare tunic and the heavy weight of her grief. Behind her, the mining town of Silver Creek faded into the whiteout, along with the shrill voice that had cast her out. "Thief! Ungrateful wretch!" Mrs. Halloway had screamed from her porch. My Lin could still hear it over the wind. For 5 years, she had worked for the Halloway family, scrubbing their floors until her knuckles were raw, cooking their meals, and mending their linens. She had been invisible, a silent shadow in a silk cheongsam that was now tattered at the hem. She had done everything right. But when a silver brooch went missing, a brooch Mrs. Halloway had likely misplaced in her own vanity, the blame fell instantly on the foreigner. No husband to defend her. He had died in the mines 3 years ago. No family. No standing. Just the word thief branding her. She stopped beside the skeletal remains of a pine tree and sank to her knees in a snowdrift. Her chest heaved, the cold air stinging her lungs. She pulled her red scarf, the only vibrant thing left in her life, tighter around her neck. It was a gift from her mother, brought across the ocean, now fraying and faded. "Ancestors," she whispered, her breath forming a cloud before her. "Do not let me perish here. Not in this cold silence." Then came a sound. Not the wind, but something rhythmic. The crunch of wheels crushing packed snow. The heavy snort of a beast. She looked up, her eyelashes heavy with frost, and saw a wagon emerging from the white mist. A massive black horse pulled it, head bowed against the gale. A tall man sat at the reins, a dark shape against the driving snow. My Lin hesitated. Strangers in the territory often meant danger, especially for a woman alone. But the wagon slowed, the wheels groaning, and stopped beside her. The man was bundled in a heavy buffalo hide coat, his face shaded by the brim of a wide, snow-dusted hat. His beard was thick, streaked with iron gray, and his eyes were the color of flint, hard but not cruel. He said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the cold. "You look like you're about to become part of this drift." My Lin tried to shake her head, but her body trembled violently. I must keep moving." "Moving where?" the man asked. "Next town is 20 miles south. In this storm, that's a death sentence." "I have nowhere else," she said, her voice barely audible. The man stepped down from the wagon. He was imposing, his boots crunching deeply into the crust. He looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the inadequate silk dress peeking from under her thin coat, the foreign features, the exhaustion etched into her pale face. Then, movement behind him caught her eye. 5 small faces peeked out from the canvas covering of the wagon bed. 5 girls, huddled under blankets, watching with wide, curious eyes. "I'm Thaddeus Thorne," he said. "I have a ranch in the foothills, about 5 miles west." He gestured toward the girls. "I'm raising 5 daughters alone." My Lin looked at the girls, then back to him. "I am My Lin." Thaddeus adjusted his gloves. "My Lin. You need shelter. That much is plain." He paused, looking at the road ahead as if weighing a heavy burden. "And I need a mother for my daughters. Or at least someone who can keep the house from falling down around our ears while I tend the herd." The words hung in the frigid air. It was a transaction, blunt and honest. "I am not a beggar," My Lin said, forcing spine into her voice. "I work hard." "I don't doubt it," Thaddeus replied. "The work is hard. Cooking, cleaning, mending. Watching them when I'm out in the drifts. You'll have a warm room, food, and fair pay." "You do not know me," she whispered. "People say I am I don't care what people say, Thaddeus cut in. I care that my girls are cold and my house is silent. Are you coming? One of the youngest girls, a tiny thing with messy pigtails, reached a mitten out from the canvas. Pleased, miss? We have a stove. Something inside my Lynn, frozen tight by grief and rejection, cracked. It wasn't hope, exactly, but it was warmth. She nodded once. I will come. Thaddeus helped her up. His grip was strong, lifting her easily onto the bench seat. He wrapped a heavy wool blanket around her shoulders. As the wagon lurched forward, the smallest girl nestled against my Lynn's side, seeking warmth. The horizon was nothing but white, but for the first time that day, my Lynn wasn't walking toward her death. Why are they so quiet? My Lynn asked after a mile, her teeth finally stopping their chattering. They've seen too many housekeepers come and go, Thaddeus said, staring at the horse's ears. Women come, see the work, see the isolation, and they leave. The girl stopped getting attached. I understand, my Lynn said softly. I know what it is to be left behind. Thaddeus glanced at her, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, but he said nothing. They turned off the main road, the wagon cutting fresh tracks into the virgin snow. The ranch appeared like a fortress against the storm. A large timber house stood stoically against a backdrop of pine-covered hills. Smoke curled from the chimney, snatched away instantly by the wind. It looked like a place that was trying to survive, but had forgotten how to live. When they arrived, the girls scrambled out, rushing for the porch. Thaddeus helped my Lynn down. The cold wood of the porch creaked under their feet. The front door swung open, and the eldest girl stood there. She looked to be about 15, her arms crossed, her eyes sharp and suspicious. She won't stay, the girl said. She didn't whisper. My Lynn met her gaze. Maybe not. But I am here now. This is Clara, Thaddeus said, his voice warning. Clara, this is my Lynn. She'll be helping us. Clara scoffed and turned on her heel, disappearing into the gloom of the house. Thaddeus showed my Lynn to a small room on the ground floor. It had a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out onto the white expanse of the yard. It's not much, he said. It is warm, my Lynn replied. That is enough. That first night, my Lynn took stock of the kitchen. It was a disaster of unwashed pots and scarce supplies. She found a sack of rice, some dried venison, and onions. She set to work. The aroma of ginger, which she had carried in a small pouch in her suitcase, and savory broth soon filled the drafty hallways. The girls hovered in the doorway. Clara stayed back, but the others were drawn by the smell. My Lynn served them. Kanji, thick and hot, garnished with green onion she found struggling in a pot by the window. It looks different, said Pearl, the youngest. It will warm your bones, my Lynn promised. Pearl took a bite, her eyes widening. It's good. Thaddeus ate in silence at the head of the table, but he scraped his bowl clean. Clara pushed hers around, refusing to look at my Lynn. Later, as the wind rattled the window panes, my Lynn sat alone in the kitchen, the embers of the stove glowing orange. The house was large, echoing with the creaks of timber settling in the cold. It felt hollow. It was waiting for something. The next morning, the sun broke through the grey, glittering off the snow. The world was diamond bright and freezing. My Lynn rose before the rooster. She washed her face in icy water, tied her hair back smoothly, and put on her red scarf. The house was a mess, but my Lynn did not despair. She started with the main room. She swept the dust of weeks, polished the blackened hearth, and organized the clutter of boots and coats. When Thaddeus came in from breaking the ice on the horse trough, he stopped in the doorway. The room wasn't just clean, it felt different. Orderly. Coffee is hot, my Lynn said, placing a mug on the table. He nodded, taking it. You work fast. Laziness freezes the blood, she said. Days turned into weeks. The winter deepened, burying the ranch in feet of snow, but inside, a slow thaw began. My Lin mended torn trousers and knitted wool socks. She taught the middle girls, Rose and Bess, how to make dumplings. She told Pearl stories of the moon goddess and the jade rabbit, her voice rising and falling like a song. But Clara remained a wall of ice. One afternoon, My Lin found Clara in the parlor, holding a wooden box. The girl snapped it shut the moment My Lin entered. "What is that?" My Lin asked gently. "Nothing. Just things Mama left," Clara snapped. "You wouldn't care." "I might," My Lin said. "I have things my mother left me, too." She touched her red scarf. Clara stared at her. "You think you can take her place? You think because you cook and clean, you're part of this family?" "I think no such thing," My Lin said, her voice steady. "No one takes a mother's place. The heart is not a room with one chair. It grows." Clara didn't reply, but she didn't leave the room. Later, My Lin found the box left on the table. Inside were packets of garden seeds, dried peas, squash, and flowers. They were old, waiting for a spring that the mother had never seen. That night, My Lin soaked some of the dried beans in water. By morning, she had prepared small pots of earth on the sunny windowsill. When Clara came down, she saw My Lin pressing the seeds into the dirt. "What are you doing?" Clara demanded. "It's winter. Seeds do not know the calendar," My Lin said. "They only know warmth and water. We start them here. When the snow melts, they will be strong enough for the earth." Clara watched, her jaw tight. Then, slowly, she reached out and took a packet of marigolds. These were her favorites. "Then you should plant them," My Lin said, handing her a trowel. They worked side by side. It wasn't a truce, exactly, but the silence wasn't angry anymore. When a tiny green shoot broke the soil 3 days later, even Thaddeus stopped to look, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Then came the blizzard. It hit in late February, a white wall of fury that slammed into the valley. The temperature plummeted. The wind shrieked like a banshee, shaking the sturdy timbers of the house. "Stay away from the windows," Thaddeus ordered, pulling on his heaviest coat. "I have to get to the barn. The heater for the calves will blow out in this draft." "It is too dangerous," My Lin said, seeing the white oat through the glass. "They're our livelihood, My Lin. If they freeze, we starve." He pushed out the door, vanishing instantly into the white. My Lin waited. 5 minutes. 10. The wind grew louder. "He's been gone too long," Clara whispered, clutching her sisters. My Lin grabbed a coil of rope and her lantern. "Lock the door behind me. Do not open it unless you hear my voice." "No. You'll die out there," Clara cried, grabbing My Lin's arm. "He needs help," My Lin said. She wrapped her red scarf tight, covering her face, and plunged into the storm. The cold hit her like a physical blow. It stole her breath and stung her eyes. She couldn't see 2 feet in front of her. She felt her way along the guide rope strung between the house and barn, but the wind threatened to tear her grip loose. She reached the barn door. It was unlatched, banging violently against the frame. Inside, the air was freezing. Thaddeus was on the ground, pinned under a heavy beam that had fallen from the loft. The calves were huddling in the corner, bleating in terror. "Thaddeus," she screamed over the wind. He groaned, his face pale. "Legs. Caught. Get back inside." "Not without you." My Lin was slim, but years of labor had made her strong. She grabbed a pitchfork, using it as a lever under the beam. "When I push, you pull," she yelled. She threw her entire weight against the handle. Her muscles screamed, her feet slipping in the straw. The beam lifted an inch. Thaddeus gritted his teeth and dragged his leg free. He collapsed, gasping. My Lin dropped the tool and fell beside him. "Can you walk?" "I think so. Broken, maybe. But I can move it." The barn door blew open again, snow swirling in. "We cannot go back," Thaddeus said. Not in this. We have to wait it out here. They huddled in the corner of the stall, buried under mounds of hay and horse blankets. Thaddeus pulled My Lin close, sharing their body heat. The storm raged outside, a deafening roar, but in the straw, it was quiet. You came for me, Thaddeus said, his voice rough. You foolish woman. You would have done the same, she murmured, her teeth chattering. He looked at her in the dim light of the lantern. I didn't think I'd ever feel warm again. Not just the cold. Inside. My Lin looked up at him. The winter does not last forever, Thaddeus. He brushed a snowflake from her hair. You saved us, My Lin. You saved this family long before tonight. They slept fitfully, the warmth of the livestock keeping them alive. When dawn broke, the wind had died. They limped back to the house through waist-deep snow. The door flew open. Clara ran out, no shoes on, and threw her arms around Thaddeus. Then, she turned and hugged My Lin, burying her face in the tattered wool coat. I thought you left, Clara sobbed. I thought everyone leaves. My Lin stroked the girl's hair. I am here. I am not going anywhere. Spring arrived with the sound of dripping water. The snow retreated, revealing mud, but also life. The seedlings from the windowsill were strong and green, ready for the garden. My Lin stood on the porch, watching the girls run through the slush. The air smelled of wet earth and pine needles. A rider appeared on the road. The mud splashed high as he galloped toward the gate. My Lin stiffened. She recognized the horse. It was Declan Hayes, a rival rancher who had long wanted Thaddeus's land. He was a large man with a smile like a snake. Thaddeus stepped out onto the porch, leaning on a cane, his leg still healing. Morning, Thorn! Hayes shouted. Heard you nearly froze to death. Figured you might be ready to sell. Save yourself the trouble of another winter. Not interested, Declan, Thaddeus said calmly. Hayes's eyes slid to My Lin. He sneered. And I see you've taken in strays. A China woman? Desperate times, eh, Thorn? Didn't know you sunk that low. Thaddeus's hand tightened on his cane, his knuckles white. But before he could speak, My Lin stepped forward. She stood tall in her cheongsam, now mended and clean, the red scarf bright against her neck. This is a home, My Lin said, her voice clear and sharp as a bell. It is built on work and loyalty. Things you know nothing of. Hayes laughed. Careful, girl. You're out of your depth. You don't belong in this country. I have bled into this soil, My Lin said, her dark eyes flashing. I have weathered the storm that would have broken you. I belong exactly where I stand. She didn't shout, but her presence was immense. The girls had gathered behind her, Clara on her right, Pearl on her left. A united front. Hayes looked at Thaddeus, then at My Lin, and finally at the 5 glaring daughters. The smirk fell from his face. He spat into the mud. This place won't last. Then you will be disappointed, My Lin replied. Hayes wheeled his horse around and galloped away, mud flinging from the hooves. Thaddeus watched him go, then turned to My Lin. You have a sharp tongue, My Lin. Some weeds need to be cut at the root, she said. Thaddeus smiled, a true, deep smile that reached his eyes. You know, when I found you on that road, I thought I was saving you. My Lin looked out at the fields, where the first hints of green were pushing through the melting snow. She thought of the long, frozen road, the loneliness that had almost consumed her, and the laughter that now filled the kitchen behind her. You gave me a roof, she said softly. And you, Thaddeus said, taking her hand in his large, rough one, you turned it into a home. Papa! My Lin! Pearl shouted from the garden patch. Look! The marigolds! They're waking up. My Lin squeezed Thaddeus's hand, then stepped off the porch into the spring sunlight. I am coming, she called out. She wasn't the widow who begged the ancestors for mercy in the snow anymore. She was the woman who had planted a garden in winter and won. The wind blew past her, no longer biting, but carrying the promise of a long, warm summer.